Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the King, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have an awesome video for you guys. You guys absolutely love these, and this is a tier list in Dead by Daylight talking about every single killer. This is going to be really fun, and we have to put out a couple of disclaimers before we start this video. Before we even jump on into that, guys, we are live on Twitch right now. Please come out and say hello. You can discuss the tier list video. Tell me what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would love to have a conversation with you. We'll be live on Twitch, as I said. Make sure you check it out. Disclaimer time. So, the way we are going to be ranking these killers are 100% subjective. It's a tier list. You know, there's no right, there's no wrong. You know, when you guys are having debates in the comments, which I know you guys will, you know, you can't just negate someone's argument and say you're wrong. You know, there's statistics to prove things. There's a lot of things to discuss about. So there's no right or wrong. This is 100% subjective. I'm going to be talking about your favorite killers in this video, and sometimes I might say something that you don't like or disagree with. That's completely fine. Keep that in mind. On top of that, I want to let you guys know as well that I am not going to be rating these killers based on their perks, strictly their base kit with their add-ons. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about specifically map pressure, how well they are at doing map pressure, and on top of that, how well are they good at looping. Those are the two ways that I'm going to be judging these killers by. So, with that being said, everyone, let's jump on in to the tier list. Here we go, the beautiful tier list, and Hillbilly seems to be the first person on the list. I don't know why. Normally he should be second, so we'll start with the Trapper. And Trapper is, as you guys know, my personal main. I main the Trapper. He's my guy. But I can admit that the Trapper has a lot of cons that significantly outweigh all of the pros that he has. So let's start with the good things that he does. First of all, Trapper can place his traps, as you know, at pallets, at loops, and really negate strong metal loops that survivors are used to having, especially towards the red ranks or against more experienced survivors. They're accustomed to, let's say, going to the killer shack, running clockwise in the killer shack, getting the maximum amount of voltage, going somewhere else. When Trapper comes in the mix, he can place a trap down and mess up the entire funky flow. That's personally why I like the Trapper. I think that he's really good at doing things like that. And on top of that, he has great basement pressure if you can utilize it properly, and he can also cut off regular standard loops pretty easily. He can also get you in a terrible 3-gen strat if you're not careful, and have significant map pressure towards the end of the map. However, and this is a big however, Trapper has a lot of faults. First of all, the biggest one, these survivors can literally disable your power without even trying. You just go to a trap, disable it, done. And of course you can use bloody coils, but there's going to be a point when you run out of those ultra rare add-ons. So being that his power can be negated is already a big hindrance to him. On top of that, he has zero map pressure at all. If you are across the map doing something and someone decides to touch a generator and work on it, there's nothing you can do. For that reason, we have to put Mr. Trapper in the C tier. I love Trapper. I wish I can put him higher, but it's just too difficult to give him such a good ranking. And I really want it, and there's a lot of things that the devs can do, which I'll talk about so much in other videos, but for now, we have to leave him at the C tier, and I think it's a respectable spot to put him in. Moving on the list, we have the Wraith. Now, the Wraith is pretty much essentially like the Trapper, since they both came out at the same time. However, there's just a little bit less, in my opinion, with the Wraith. Now, you can use add-ons to make his power seem more viable, and give it a different style of play. We've seen amazing killers like Ots or True Talent do this with the Sloppy Butcher and Bone Clapper add-on, and just run Nurse's Calling to find his survivors, and it works for the most part, but then it becomes map reliant, and once the survivors typically know that it is a Wraith, they keep an eye out, and your power is pretty much negated. When you are cloaked and invisible, you do move faster, so you have a little bit more map pressure, but basically, what you make up for in just a tiny bit of map pressure is completely negated by loops and just survivors knowing you're around. For that reason, I think the Wraith is just a very basic killer, can use a lot to work on his kit. We're going to put him behind the Trapper on the C tier. Again, no hard feelings to my guy. I really do like the Wraith, and you can make some unique and interesting builds with him, but for the most part, he's very standard. For the newer survivors that are playing against him, you might get scared a little bit, you might fall into some of his tricks and traps, but for the most part, Wraith is very lackluster. Moving on to the list with the original 3 killers is the Hillbilly. Now, Hillbilly out of the 3 is definitely the better half of them. And he has what good killers need. First of all, he has high mobility. If you ever need to go across a map for whatever reason, you can do so. There's add-ons that help with this. And recently, as you know, they changed the Hillbilly as well. They changed both of the Chainsaw Brothers. And even though they made him a little less to what he is, it just opened the door to counterplay. And if you know how to play as the Hillbilly, you'll still perform well. And on top of that, he has a one-shot down ability, which is just amazing. You know, keeping up the pressure, knocking survivors down instantly, and it's pretty good. However, on the flip side, you still can loop the Hillbilly, and if he's assigned to rev his chainsaw and you continue to loop correctly, it's very difficult for the Hillbilly to get good hits on you unless they're extremely good at curving. And the add-ons are not as good as they used to be. We no longer have carburetor tuning guides or Thompson mixes, which, you know, both ways, it's very, very strong. But, you have to rely solely on your skill and using the chainsaw at the appropriate time. This doesn't really knock him down a peg, but later on when we talk about other killers in the same tier as him, it will make a big difference. All in all, Hillbilly is still a great killer, great map pressure, having that one-shot ability. You can't really knock too much off of him, and for that reason, he is in the A tier. Hillbilly is definitely good. He's really good. And the only other downside to him is that sometimes he can be a little bit map dependent, but for the most part, he is fine. Next on the list is Nurse. We don't even need to talk much about his S tier. I'm tired of hearing so many people saying that the Nurse is not good. The Nurse is still good. You just don't know how to play Nurse to the maximum potential. And that's the way we're ranking these killers on this list. If you are a really good Nurse, nothing is standing in your way. Maps don't matter, loops don't matter, map pressure doesn't matter. She negates it all. And the only time you do bad as Nurse is either A, the survivor has dead hard and you miss your attack, or B, it is your own fault and you mistaked the blink or failed your prediction of where the survivors are going to be. If you nail 100% of your predictions, there is nothing that the survivors can do. Versus a killer like Hillbilly, or Trapper, or Wraith, or much of the other killers on this list, if you nail everything on the head, survivors can still loop you, still get those gens done, and outshine you. The Nurse, there isn't much that needs to be said about the Nurse that isn't already said. She is strong. Alrighty, let's move on to the next killer, and that killer is Myers. Now, I, for one, don't play Myers really well, and I personally don't like him because he honestly only has 2 add-ons that really helps him. The other add-ons are just more for build type of things if you want to have some fun, like Scratch Mirror, Burger King Myers, which you shouldn't run if you're playing competitively. But then at that point, it's also map reliant. So besides that, the only 2 other good add-ons are the ones that charge him up faster. Now, when he is in tier 3, he does perform very well. He has that one-shot mechanic. You have to be strategic when using it and limiting it so it doesn't, you know, go over the top and you run out of your power when it's needed. But when you do have these 60 seconds of expose, or if you prime it and get someone on the hook, it can really pay some dividends. Now, he does lack in map pressure and he's not the best at looping, but he's essentially basically, think about like the Trapper, the Wraith, just buffed up because he has that one-shot ability. So, long story short, we'll just put him in the higher tier at the B tier. He still is a pretty good killer, and if you get certain maps or unaware survivors, you'll eventually do good. Now, obviously, survivors will know that you are around, and he does have some downsides like slow movement speed in tier 1 and things like that. Once you're into tier 2 and you get it going, you can easily get some hits on, and then again, he's just, again, M1 killer, not much to him, but he does have that one-shot ability. Moving on, next on the list is the Hag, Hagatha. Now, Hag is probably one of the most underrated killers in the game. She is so good, and once you get someone on the hook, or in the basement, or wherever it is, you will start doing so good. Place a couple traps right at her feet, and that's pretty much it. Now, she is a 110 movement speed killer, but her power makes up for it significantly, being able to teleport. Well, you can use this to combat loops if you're strategic about it. If you place your traps pretty early, you can always teleport to them when survivors are there. If not, you can just place it there and then mind game. She has that potential based on your skill cap. On if someone's running a loop, you place a trap, they run into it, you can mind game teleporting to it or waiting. And then, of course, if someone is in the hook or on the basement, place a bunch of traps around, teleport when someone is near, smack them down. If they refuse to do that, they'll be wasting time crouch walking. By the time you check on the hook, you will see the person, knock them, and continue the process. Now, of course, she does have some penalties to her. She is 110, and her power kind of combats looping, but not to the best extent. Her power really just excels when someone is indeed on the hook. And of course, some of the add-ons just make her over the top strong, like Rusty Shackles. So with all that being considered, I have to put the Hag in the B+ tier. I think she deserves that. There is an argument that she can be in the B tier, but I think she has more potential with some of the perks, with some of the add-ons, just to become more and better than Myers, if we're comparing her to Myers, just because with Myers, as I said, there's just 2 add-ons that realistically help him. With Hag, there's a bunch of different things. You can have more range, you can have faster movement speed, you can have whatever the case may be, and I think she has much more variety in her gameplay. Moving on the list, we have Freddy. The doctor should be here actually, but we're going to talk about Freddy. Freddy has everything that a good killer needs. In fact, we're going to talk about him later, he's a better clown, essentially. You can put down puddles or dream pallets to help you, 2 variations to the power. I prefer the pallets personally, but dream snares are also very good. So, talking about what we mentioned at the beginning of the stream, a good killer needs to have A, good map pressure, and B, good chases. And Freddy has exactly that. That is the standard killer should follow. It's not overwhelming, it's just good. He can teleport to generators over time, and that over time is dependent on how many survivors are asleep. Standard, it is 60 seconds, and it negates, I believe, what is it, 15 seconds or 10 seconds? Don't quote me on it because I'm definitely wrong. It's been so long to remember some numbers. But that negates the time that he can teleport to other generators. On top of that, when you are in the dream mode, you start seeing these puddles, you start seeing these pallets. If you're looping a pallet and it's a fake pallet, you essentially drop it, he gets a free hit. If you're looping a regular window and there's a puddle there, you're forced to go in it, you slow down, and he will cut that chase down significantly. That is literally it with his power. Of course, he has it if you are asleep, you don't hear his heartbeat, so he has a little bit of a stealth aspect to him, but if you're an aware survivor, it won't really catch you off guard. However, this is why he has the highest kill rating in Dead by Daylight. He is one of the better killers, and simply put, he just cuts chases down and he can keep that map pressure up. And there are so much different add-ons that you can run with him that significantly improve his gameplay. And for that reason, Mr. Freddy is in the A tier. He is amazing. He is absolutely amazing, and I absolutely love him. And majority of the community, anytime you ask them, pretty much agree with this. They say that the Nightmare, or Freddy, is really, really good, and that's simply because of those reasonings. Alrighty, moving on to the next killer on the list. Excuse me. Need some water, actually. The next killer on the list is the Pig, and Pig is, one of the fan favorites. People like booping the snoot. But aside from that, the Pig, in my opinion, is pretty lackluster. She doesn't have much going on with her, and just like the other people in the tier we're going to put her, which is the C tier, she kind of does the same thing. She's an M1 killer. She has that stealth aspect to her that can sometimes catch survivors off guard, but then you get that big loud roar, and then the survivors are aware, they run away, they sprint burst away, and that is pretty much it. If you're trying to be smart and tactical and using this power at a specific loop, all the survivor needs to do is to run away. That's it. That is how you combat her when she's trying to use her power. If it is an unsafe pallet, you can get lucky and get the hit on somebody, but besides that, that is pretty much it. There is nothing more to her. Of course, we have the bear traps. We can't forget about those, but ever since the recent updates that change it so that they don't work with the exit gates there, again, really lackluster. Now, of course, you can run add-ons like Tamper Timer and Creative Gears and make it a little bit better, but still, it's very underwhelming unless the survivors mess up and, or RNG's not on their side, which is very, very rare. Again, going back to her regular power, then all she does is crouching, and that already in itself takes so long to do. And then to ambush, making that loud roar is so revealing, and by the time you do that, the survivor is gone if they're smart and they just go to a different loop. And then back to her negatives, you can just loop her all day, and she's just an M1 killer. Nothing to her. However, you still can get some plays going on with her. You still can manage to do something with her if survivors are unlucky and get those plays going. So for that reason, she is in the C tier. I personally put her above everybody else in the C tier just because she has a little bit more viability and versatility, having 2 different powers essentially rather than the one that the Trapper and the Wraith has. So that's where I would put her. Again, there's a lot of love that can be shown to Piggy. We can give her rule set number 2 base, We can give her combat straps base. There's so many things that we can do in order to make her good. I always say that if a killer is weak, you can know they're weak by taking their ultra add-ons and making it base. If that ultra add-on base doesn't really make them overpowered, then they need a buff. But if that ultra add-on makes them overpowered, they are in a good place. Use as an example with the Huntress. Give her Eerie Head base, pretty damaging. Use it in the Piggy's case, rule set number 2 base, not so significant. Moving on to the next killer on the list, the Clowny Boy. The Clown was an attempt of Dead by Daylight putting out the first killer that can combat looping. At this time, looping was still relatively new in the game, and Bloodlust was introduced not too long before, and they really wanted to mix it up and give us a killer that can combat this. That answer was a Clown. And realistically, the Clown just wasn't it. Freddy was the better Clown, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. The Clown's power is pretty standard. You have your bottles, you reload your bottles, you toss them around, survivors get hindered, they can't see, it is annoying, but doesn't really stop anything. All they need to do is to avoid the smoke, and if they are looping consistently at one place, and the Clown drops some smoke, run away from the smoke. That is it. Even when you are hindered, you still can make it to vault, you still can drop the pallet and expand the chase. Clown has 4 bottles base, and even though they introduced that recent buff that essentially makes it so that, I don't even remember because it's so insignificant, it just doesn't fill the gap that Clown needs. And they have mentioned themselves that the Clown will receive some changes eventually, and there's more that they want to do, and they don't think what they've done is enough, which we all agree with. I'm sure that we all can agree that the Clown is the worst killer in the game as of now. He's not that good. He realistically sucks. And I wish there was more that they could do with him. I personally have a change that I would like on him, and that's the more intoxicated you get with the bottles right after each other, like maybe like a 2-second gap, the harsher the penalty becomes, the slower you move, everything like that. That is an amazing fix that I think would work very well, but hopefully we'll see something like that coming. When talking about his add-ons, there really isn't nothing that helps. I find myself using Cork Stopper a lot, and that just makes it so I can reload a lot faster, something that should be on his base kit anyways. So it is pretty lackluster when it comes down to it. You just toss bottles, survivors run away, and that's pretty much it for the Clown. So much changes that can be made to the Clown, and I would put him in the F tier, but he still can be viable from time to time. So for that reason, we are putting him in the D tier. So moving on to the list, we have the Spirit. Pretty spooky. Not much that needs to be said as well. Normally, I would put her in the A tier above everybody, but as of recently, I'm going to put her in the S tier right next to the Nurse. There really isn't much you can do against certain builds on the Spirit, specifically simply running Strider. That is all you need to do to put her over the top. This is something that has become so meta nowadays, and I always thought it was overkill because the Spirit was strong as is. I personally used to run yellow add-ons only, and if you go anywhere near those purples or greens, you become unstoppable. You literally stand still to mind game survivors at pallets. It is little to no skill required in that aspect. Of course, there is skill required when trying to determine when to figure out where the survivors are at, mind gaming them at certain pallets, going on the opposite side and smacking them down and things like that. But when it comes to just standing still, there's no effort required. You stand still, the survivors don't know what you're doing. They drop the pallet out of haste or curiosity, whatever it is, and yeah, there's nothing you can really do about it. There's not much you can do to combat a good Spirit, and with Strider on top of that, she always hears you to pinpoint exactly where you're at, and she's just on you. She has map pressure in the sense that she can just use her power, travel a little bit faster, go around. If you run add-ons to make her go faster as well, she can keep that map pressure up. And she combats looping by literally standing still. You don't have to do anything. And if you refuse to stand still, you can wait a couple of seconds, see what the survivor's doing, go into your power, chase them down, knock them down. That's pretty much it. A good Spirit, hard to combat. If you play her at a high skill level and you know what you're doing, she's really difficult to deal with. Of course, you can loop a Spirit, but with the passive phasing and things like that, sometimes you can slip up a little bit more, and then she just capitalizes on it. So for that reason, Spirit is in the S tier, right below Nurse, because, you know, unlike the Nurse, she still can technically be looped, although it is really difficult to do so. But Again, Nurse just completely negates all of those pallet loops whatsoever. There's nothing that you can do about it. However, the Spirit, you still can get an upper hand on her if you're predicting her right. If she decides to mind game you and you drop the pallet on her, you still can sometimes get that force stun while she's phasing and things like that. So for that reason, she is below the Nurse. I think it's a really hefty debate between them, and one day I will have that debate with somebody, but for now, we'll put her below the Nurse. Alrighty, next on the list is the Doctor. The Doctor, as you know, recently got an update. Not really too recent now. I need to stop saying recently because it has been a while since Doctor received this update. And with this update, they basically took his base kit and switched it from treatment and punishment mode, put it into one, and now you have the static blast, and you just can shock regularly and still smack. This just makes it more comfort to life update. His power helps you in certain loops and certain window vaults if you get lucky with the hit. The range is a bit short, but you can't really complain too much about it. If you know how to use the power, you will do good. I personally wish that the range was a little bit bigger, but I'm just not as experienced with Doctor as I am with other killers. He also has the static blast, which gives him the opportunity to make up for the map pressure that he doesn't have, and that essentially is static blasting, figuring out where survivors are, and information is always useful when playing killer. Figure it out, continue to snowballing, and keep on going. And of course, if you are in Tier 3 Madness, you can't do anything, and because of you not being able to do anything, that's where he capitalizes. You can't work on gens, you can't do saves, you can't flashlight save, you can't do anything, and that basically negates time. Time is of the essence, and that's where Doctor prevails. Now, obviously, he doesn't have map pressure, but that's what he makes up for. And when it comes down to looping and combating looping, he has his static blast that if you get blasted at the right time, you can't drop the pallet and he'll get the hit on you. Now to the cons, of course, you still can loop him. He still doesn't have crazy map pressure if you're outside of his static blast range, and sometimes his power falls a little bit short, and even if you get shocked, you still can drop the pallet, and then in that case, he becomes like a clown, where you just continue running along. But his base kit still does help him a lot, and with some of the amazing add-ons that he has, I have to put him in the B+ tier. I think most of you guys will agree with that. He is pretty good in that aspect. So that is the ranking that we are going to be putting him at. Moving on the list, we have Bubba. My oh my, Bubba has received a change since our last tier list, which was back in June, almost July. And since then, Bubba has really improved. I think he is a phenomenal killer now. Before, he used to be very lackluster. By the time you use your power, people would vault and get pallet loops and things like that. Bubba has really changed. He's had the biggest glow up of 2020. And since then, he has become a killer that you see a lot more. He plays competitively at the high ranks, and he does pretty damn good. He doesn't have, again, amazing map pressure like some of the other killers do, but what he lacks in map pressure, he makes up in the ability to not only knock down survivors with his power, but knock down multiple survivors with his power. When it comes down to 1v1 chasing, he is an absolute god at it. There is little that you can do besides run to a window or drop a pallet that will protect you. If you don't do that, Bubba's gonna have an easy time picking you off. Now, of course, you can loop him, and if Bubba is not careful, he can knock something and then go into tantrum mode, which will be significant to you. But if you're caught in the open, you're a dead man walking. Some of the add-ons that he has makes him really good as well. Some of them are pretty lackluster and don't really make too much sense, like the add-on that makes survivors drop their items. Doesn't really mean much. And of course, you can use doom engravings and things like that to amplify his power even more than it already is. Bubba has very little counterplay when it comes down to late game because you don't really have too much pallets to use, so you're caught in dead zones more often than you would like to be. The only things that will help are, window vaults, and all he needs to do is cancel his power and go around and cut you off. This is why a lot of Bubbas you see run bamboozled. Of course, we're not talking about perks, but it makes him significantly better. So for that reason, we are going to put Bubba in the B+ there, and I think he honestly deserves to be above the other two because he has that one-shot ability that is so taxing. And especially since you can put someone on the hook and knock down both people, it makes it very difficult to get those saves when it comes down to him being right there. You don't really want to farm anyone because he'll easily knock you both down. Other killers cannot do that. In fact, no other killer can do that besides probably the play when she is using her corrupt. So that is where we are ranking Bubba. Again, He does have some penalties to him, some downsides, but the pros outweigh the cons in this instance, and I think he is pretty damn good. If only we had some cosmetics for him, then he would be even better. Moving on, we have Miss Huntress. Now, Huntress is one of the first, if not the first, she was the first, ranged attack killer that we've seen in the game. And she is pretty damn terrifying if you play against a good Huntress. Think about killers like Queen Kuro or Scott, you know, these guys that are really good at Huntress, that practice and put so many hours into it. They know every nook and cranny that they can shoot a hatchet through. They know how to fish hook when someone is across the map and keep that pressure up by literally being across the map and just yeeting hatchets around. And I've seen these guys run without any gen stopping builds and just absolutely dominating some of the most competitive players in Dead by Daylight. If you play Huntress to the maximum potential, you will do really good. She has an amazing ability to zone survivors in one area by literally just holding her power and waiting. And if she's accurate with those hits, it will completely negate whatever you're doing. Of course, you can loop her, but by the time you decide to drop a pallet, all she needs to do is to lift her hatchet up and toss it. Now, of course, she has some super strong add-ons: an iridescent head, utility belt, flower babushka, mana grass braid, toxins. These are all amazing add-ons that the Huntress has that put her over the top. Now, of course, she has counterplay to her. She has little to no map pressure whatsoever. She is 110 after all, and not to mention the 110 also makes it more difficult to combat looping. But if she is good and survivors play into your hand, you can cut those loops down by tossing hatchets to windows, or if they're dropping a pallet, you can get the hit on them. If it's a smart survivor and you decide to respect the pallet or anything like that, they will extend the chase. But if you're a better Huntress, you won't really fall for those things. And then, of course, she has the ability to have amazing hook pressure. This also goes to basement pressure in the sense that if someone's in the basement, you're not getting out. And if two people go in, you just toss a hatchet, smack them down, toss a hatchet, smack them down. Really easy. With some skill, Huntress is definitely up there, and we have to give her the A ranking. Now, it is split between B+ just because of how the meta has been changing and things like that, and that's pretty much where we're going to put her for today. Next on the list is the Legion. Now, you guys know that I voiced the Legion for Lumi or Luminous, and I have fun doing that, but I don't have fun when it comes to playing the Legion. I never really liked the Legion, but he slowly made his way, or they, I should say, have crept into my heart, and I learned to understand how to play them and just do better as them. But I still find the same faults that I always do anytime I play, and that being when you use your power the way it's meant to be and you Feral Frenzy, you knock somebody, you need to go and hit somebody else in order to really use the full potential of your power. However, there's a big however again, odds of you finding someone are slim to none. You'll see that heartbeat across the map. By the time you run there, your power is almost done. And then if the survivor has sprint bursts or they decide to run beforehand, hearing that you're coming, they will literally outrun you. And he can definitely use a little bit of a movement speed based boost when it comes down to that. So that really sucks. The only other option that you have, or if you get lucky, is to knock multiple survivors at once, get out your power, smack people down, and if you aren't so fortunate and you smack somebody, then you have to go out your power, hit them down, and then capitalize on it. Now, of course, this does take some time, and on certain maps, it can work. On certain, like, wide open maps, you're not going to find any survivors to smack again, and that's when his power basically becomes negated. What really amplifies his powers are perks, and however, we're not talking about perks in here, so he's going to be knocked down to the C tier. Now, I am going to put him above Trapper and the Wraith. I do think he's better than them. I don't necessarily think he's better than Piggy, but I can go either way. I can put him above Piggy. I can keep him below Piggy. It doesn't really matter because they're both pretty poor killers. And of course, you can make him viable. That's a disclaimer I forgot to say. Disclaimer if you're watching now. You can make any killer viable and get a 4K with them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're good when compared to all of the other players that are playing them and the skill rating and how much kills they get. That's what we're pretty much talking about. So on average, the best Huntress will do better than the best Legion, if that makes sense. Back to what we were talking about. I digress. Legion, again, just lackluster all around. You can make it viable. You can get some hits in and you can do well. But without those Thanatophobia Sloppy Butcher combinations, that's pretty much it. There's nothing really that you can do. And then he just becomes a default killer that runs around and does nothing. If he was faster, it would definitely be a lot better. Moving down on the list is the Plague. The Plague is one of those killers that I still think can use a little bit more of a buff and she would still be viable. Survivors still find a way to combat her, and that way of combating her is just not cleansing. Of course, she now has the opportunity to go to a fountain, and by going to a fountain that is already corrupted at the beginning of the game, she can just drink from the fountain, knock those people down that are forcibly staying injured, and continue on. If that's not the case, people, she just vomits on people, get them injured, get them into broken state, and that's pretty much it. They're forced to cleanse, people don't cleanse, and you can capitalize by using an apple or something like that, or the Ultra add-on that makes it so every gen that pops, you'll be able to use that Vile Purge. I personally think that the Vile Purge, being at every other generator, or every generator, sorry, could be base. I see it being viable. Not necessarily you automatically getting it, but maybe a pool of devotion gets corrupted. I think that would be pretty fair. However, we're not here to talk about buffs, we're here to talk about the Plague. Now, Plague definitely has a lot of potential. She can be really good if you are playing her correctly. If you manage to get all 4 survivors injured, and they are stuck in the broken status effect, you can simply go and get your Vile Corrupt, and vomit all over everybody, and capitalize on it. However, once this is done, that's pretty much it until someone else decides to cleanse, and more often than not in a competitive game, people choose not to cleanse whatsoever, which is a smart thing to do. Hence why you see a lot of these guys running Blood Echo and Thanatophobia, but again, if we're solely talking about add-ons, I'm going to have to put her in the B tier. I do think she is pretty good. I don't think she's at that level where, she's overwhelming, but she definitely can be in the B+ tier if they do that one change that I mentioned, and she will become very, very viable. I think that's a fair assessment for her and a fair ranking, and I'm sure you guys can understand. Of course, you can still loop her. She's a regular killer, but if she is in her Vile and Corrupt Purge, then it's a little bit more difficult to loop her. Besides that, that's pretty much it. No map pressure whatsoever because she is just a 115 movement speed, or 110. Is she 110 or 115? I think she's 115. She's just a 115 killer, and that's pretty much it for her. Next on the list is Ghostface. Ghostface is a very fun killer, licensed of course, so pretty iconic, and he is fun to play. Now, the only issue that I have with Mr. Ghostface is how finicky his power can be. From time to time, you get kicked out of your power and survivors are not even looking at you. From time to time, survivors cannot kick you out of your power when they're directly looking at you. And I think this is a server-related problem, so I can't be too harsh about that on Ghostface. But that's something that always lingers in my mind anytime I think about him. Now, going to his power and his gameplay, of course, no map pressure whatsoever, no shock there, but he does have the ability and makes up for it by crouching, giving you that stealth aspect. To give him one way of playing him, you can crouch, use your Night Shroud in order to just be stealthy and run around killing people. We've seen this used by True Talent a lot, where he just stabs people and not really expose them. Or you can play on the other side, getting people 99 exposed and keeping them primed and ready for whenever you need to knock them down, using your power and instantly cutting that chase down really, really short because they are one-shotted. And of course, his power recharges really quickly. It doesn't take much to stock someone up to expose them, and that really, really helps. And for that reason, we are going to put him in a B+ tier, and I think he's better than the Doctor and the Hag. I don't think he's at the level of Bubba. Bubba just has the ability of knocking more survivors down than him, but for him, you can always keep survivors primed, and if you decide to expose them and not even do anything about it, sometimes those survivors decide to hide, and if they're hiding and not working on generators, that works for you, giving you more pressure that you otherwise wouldn't have. So for that reason, we're going to put him in B+, and again, he's just a regular killer. You can loop him and get rid of that, so that's why he's not over the top, such as the Hillbilly or anybody else, because he doesn't have that map pressure aspect. Moving on to someone that does have map pressure aspect, the Demogorgon. Now, Demogorgon, again, has that map pressure asset. He also can cut chases down with his power if he decides to do so, and use it by just basically cutting down your chases, getting into lunge, and that's pretty much it. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. And I've seen some people doing this and getting insane records and kills with him, and doing significantly well as the Demogorgon. However, the one thing that negates him a lot is not having the ability to reset his portals at will. Because of this, you have to go to wherever that portal is and then teleport from there. On top of that, survivors can also negate that teleportation ability, which, you know, makes up for the fact that he can't place new portals. But on top of that, it makes it so that if you place a portal at a very smart location, survivors will easily get rid of it, and then you can't utilize it without resetting it, wasting your own time. Now, his lunge is really good. If you know how to use the lunge pretty efficiently, you can get some really good hits and cut some chases down significantly. If someone's going to a vault, you can stop them from doing that. Sometimes you can get some cheeky hits through pallets, and then he becomes pretty viable in that sense. However, again, he's just a very balanced and average killer. And I think most of you guys can agree with that. Just like Freddy, he has everything that a good killer needs. However, there is counterplay in the sense that survivors can counter his power. And on top of that, he doesn't have the access of teleporting everywhere similar to Freddy. And on top of that, just like Freddy, or unlike Freddy, I should say, survivors don't really fall for his tricks too much. Because if you are deciding to try to zone survivors, which he does have a great ability of doing, but survivors can sometimes call your bluff and just negate it. And if you decide to lunge anyways and they decide not to vault or give you that very safe hit, then your power is negated. But he still does have a lot of pros to him. You still can technically zone survivors, get an easy free hit on them and things like that. For that reason, we're going to be putting him on into the B tier. I don't think he's better than the Plague, but I think he is definitely one of the more balanced and fun killers to play. Speaking about fun, let's move on to the Oni. Depends on what side you're asking, though. Oni is one of the stronger killers in DBD. He has high mobility, he has the power to one-shot, he forces survivors to heal or else you give him his power, and because of that, he is just amazing. And I'm going to put him at the A tier, and he is going to be leading the A tier above Hillbilly. There was a lot of ongoing debates on whether the Hillbilly was better than the Oni or was the Oni better than the Hillbilly. There was a lot of debate saying they're pretty much the same thing. And since the Hillbilly received those nerfs in the sense that he needs to keep his chainsaw cooled all the time, it basically evens the playing field a little bit more towards the Oni. And I always would put the Oni above Hillbilly, and now I see the Oni outshining the Hillbilly. With the flick at the end of, you know, using your dash, you just become pretty unstoppable. Survivors have little to do in order to combat you unless they make it to a vault or a pallet. And even in that sense, if you're running something like Top Knot or anything like that, you're just unstoppable. Top Knot, jeez. Top Knot should be changed because it is so strong on him. Talking about cracked add-ons, remember Hillbilly used to have like Carburetor Tuning Guide and Primer Bulb. You could give Oni a run for his money based on who's better, but now Hillbilly doesn't have that. Oni does in Top Knot. And Top Knot just makes him so significant. So again, he has amazing map pressure, can run around the map at will whenever he has his power ready. Of course, survivors are forced to heal because of this, because if they don't, you'll leave a bunch of blood, and then he picks it up, gets his power again. And then when it comes down to pallet chasing and looping, of course you can loop him, similar to Hillbilly. However, if he is in rage and that speed, it just kills you. You can't manage to make it to a vault or a pallet. And if you do, it'll only buy you a little bit of time. So for that reason, the Oni is in the A tier, and I believe that he definitely belongs there. Moving on the list is the Death Slinger. And for a while, there's been debates on if the Death Slinger and the Huntress were, you know, better. And there was even a time that I went on record saying that the Death Slinger was better than a Huntress until I learned how to play as and against him a little bit more. That was a very early judgment call, so I take my word back on that. And Death Slinger, sorry, is definitely not better than a Huntress in no means. Again, he's a one-tin killer. He makes up for this with having a nice ranged attack. However, it is, unlike the Huntress, suppressed at a point. I believe it's 24 meters that you can shoot, and you have to be surprisingly so accurate with him because you are shooting a gun. Unlike the beach balls that you shoot with the Huntress. So with him, you have a very tiny point, and sometimes this point can move around. Even though you can have the perfect accuracy, you can still miss a shot because of one, latency of how small it is, and two, because sometimes the shot has a weird like box that it goes randomly. It's really weird. I remember seeing this from a video. I don't remember exactly what video. Of course, you can pull off some amazing shots with the Death Slinger, and you can really do good if you're running specific perks. Again, we're not talking about perks, but if we're solely talking about his base kit, reloading add-ons and range add-ons or faster recovery when survivors break your spare are the way to go. And by doing this, you can cut off some loops pretty significantly if you shoot and have good accuracy. But besides that, he is pretty standard. He's just a killer that walks around, and you can loop him. If you decide to drop a pallet when you're already injured, there isn't much that his power will do to you. And if you manage to loop properly, you should be just fine. Now, he does have the opportunity to shoot you through windows and things like that and manage to reel you in and get you going. But besides that, that is pretty much it for the Deathslinger in a nutshell. Very, very balanced and average killer in the game. Fun to play as, fun to play against, and, you know, nothing really that outshines anybody else. So for that reason, he's in the B tier. I would personally put him right behind Myers, though. I think he is pretty good. Or maybe it's difficult to put him above Myers, but I definitely could if I wanted to, but I'll leave him right behind Myers. I've seen some good Deathslinger plays. I've seen some great Deathslinger plays, but it is limited and sometimes map dependent as well. So, moving on, next on the list, the Executioner or Pyramid Head. Obviously, we are going to be getting some changes to Pyramid Head very, very soon, but that time has not come yet, and we will see that tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow is Tuesday when we're going to be seeing that, so maybe I'll have to update specifically him alone on a separate video. As Pyramid Head goes, he is a very strong killer. He doesn't have a lot of map pressure, but makes up for it in the right of speed and altering the map. You know, he forces survivors not to go to specific loops if they don't want to go into Torment, and if they do go into Torment, which you can force them to do so, what ends up happening is that they can quickly be sent to a cage, giving him time to continue snowballing on survivors, or when it gives him information on where the survivors are at. Of course, he can instantly kill you. He doesn't have to pick you up and hook you, and the same with just putting you into a cage. He doesn't have to pick you up and kill you, put you on a hook. On top of that, he counters DS completely. If you hook them the first time, then send them to the cage the second time, you can final judgment them at the end, or not, or just pick them up and put them on a hook and not have to worry about DS, one of the best perks for survivors in the game. So in that aspect, he is really good. That's not even talking about his actual rights of judgment power. This is a power that the devs themselves said that ensures you safe hits. All you need to do is plant your sword in the ground, wait for a survivor to go to a pallet or a vault, and use it when they decide to vault or drop it. If they refuse to do that, what ends up happening is you make up distance on them, and you're able to get a free, easy swing on them, and then you continue to rinse and repeat. Of course, he doesn't have map pressure. He can be combated in that sense. But again, what he lacks in that, he makes up for in speed. By the time he knocks someone down, send them to the dungeon, send them to the cage, and that's pretty much it. You continue going along, killing everybody else, and you can hit multiple survivors with this attack as well. With that being said, I'm going to put him in the B+ tier. And I definitely think that he's better than all these killers, with the exception of Bubba. I will put him above Bubba just for now. He essentially can knock both survivors down as well. He doesn't have that one-shot capability, but unlike Bubba, he does have the ability to have a little bit more map pressure in that sense, in, you know, putting people across the map. Not really map pressure, that's the wrong terminology to use there because I literally just said he doesn't have map pressure. I'm contradicting myself. But he has speed on his side, I should say, to force survivors to run across, leave their objective to go somewhere else. And even if they are just running across like 10 feet to go to grab somebody, that's still a fast hook that you just got, and you can continue to rinse and repeat. Now, obviously, the Blight is final on this list, and we put him in the F tier. Thanks for watching. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. Blight is not in the F tier. Oh, I can't take him back out. No! Alrighty, well, we'll put the Blight in a tier, and I think the Blight is in a B+ tier, but I think he's going to be right underneath the Nightmare, the Shroud, right? The Shroud? Ghostface. The Blight is a very good killer, and if you know how to play him, you will do well with him. You can set it up where you can quickly use your speed, your octane speed, in order to just knock people down quick. This combats looping if you really know how to use his power. You've seen me play gameplay of him and cutting those loops down significantly. This gives you amazing map pressure, so you're doing really good there, and you can also combat chases really well. He has a high ceiling with some really, really good add-ons. Add-ons that reveal auras of people, add-ons that give you your lethal rush stacks back, add-ons that do pretty much everything that he needs, one-shotting survivors, you know? So he is a very good killer. There is a skill cap to him, but once you understand him, you will do good. As of now, a lot of people think that he's pretty lackluster and not good. That's because they haven't had enough experience playing as him. He's definitely very viable. he has that map pressure aspect of him, and he cuts down loops. Now, on certain loops, certain unsafe loops, you can't really use your power because it's such a short loop, and by the time you run to go hit into a wall and you come back, the survivor's already looping it, so it doesn't really make sense to use it at those, especially considering they're unsafe as well. Since they are an unsafe loop, all you need to do to capitalize on it is simply just mind gaming. Be a good killer, mind game them, and you'll get them out. If it's a longer loop, you can get it. The only downside to him is that his range and his cone when attacking is about 45 degrees. And because of this, survivors can go a little bit to your left, a little bit to your right, and you get cheated out of a hit. If that specifically has been adjusted and will change, he will automatically be way higher, probably B+ in my opinion, at the top of this list. But for now, he's going to be toasty in the middle of B+ because he's a very average killer. He has the fundamentals to make a good killer. He's fun to play as, fun to play against, and yeah. It does have counterplay and gives the survivors enough time to understand what to do because he has to run into something before he can smack you down. But once you do that, you can instantly turn, run to a survivor, and smack them down again. I was waiting for a very long time in order to make this tier list, in order for him to get a buff and his changes in order to accurately describe what he is and where he's ranking. But that is officially where we are going to put him. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is going to wrap up the tier list. And my oh my, we've done good. We went through all these killers and we're not over an hour. I'm happy about that. I was afraid I was going to spend too much time talking about these guys. But we've made so many of these tier lists that I think it's really easy to articulate myself on what I need to say, get the points across with the pros and the cons. And I hope you guys did enjoy. Of course, I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me. I know a lot of you guys are going to agree with me. So I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know what you think. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Did I say something silly? Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below. And if you didn't, leave a dislike and tell me why in the comments. On top of that, we are live on Twitch. Make sure you guys come out and say hello. Talk about this tier list with me. I would love to hear your opinions if you disagree or agree with me. We are live right now as you're watching this, and we'll be live from 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you missed that time frame, not to worry, because we are streaming every single day except for Saturday for 3 months in a row. And we're also going to be uploading videos every single day for 3 months in a row, 2 videos a day, except for Saturday. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Join the Discord if you want to have some more like personalized conversations. You can talk to me one-on-one in the general chat. Follow us on Twitter for updates and everything like that. Hopefully we'll see you as well on the birthday subathon that's going to be taking place on Twitch, or Bidathon I should say. So make sure you guys come on out. It's going to be really fun. And stay tuned for the PTB information tomorrow. We're going to have about 3 or 4 videos coming out for you guys tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. As always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys. We'll see you in the fall.